Keep watching and you'll learn how to outplay your opponent positionally and then win tactically. This is game 9 of Chernev's logical chess move by move. Let's jump right in. We get e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop to b5. A Roy Lopez. Black plays a6, putting the question to this bishop, and it's worth pointing out, for those who are maybe new to the Roy Lopez, that white cannot win a pawn here. It might look as though he can after this capture followed by taking on e5, but it is well known that black can easily regain the pawn with queen to d4, with a double attack on the knight and the pawn, and black has actually got a better position here. So let's go back. After a6, the bishop retreats to a4, knight to f6, just normal development, and white castles. Again, it might look as though there's a pawn up for grabs here, but if black takes it, which is actually possible, this is a way of playing, but white will get the pawn back with, for example, rook to e1 or d4 first. So there's no way for black to win material back there. So instead, black just plays bishop to e7, nice and solid, preparing to castle. Rook to e1 is played, so now there is no chance of black being able to take that pawn. And now b5. It was important for black to play that first because white actually had a threat, which didn't exist a couple of moves back. If black had castled, for example, well, now white could take this knight and take this pawn, and the idea of queen to d4 doesn't work so well anymore. You can just move back, and this pawn is defended, and white has a pawn up. So, b5 first. Bishop to b3 obviously has to retreat, and d6. So now that pawn is securely defended. Now c3, this move has a couple of ideas. One of them is to give this bishop a square in case of knight to a5. And the other idea is to play d4, supported by this pawn. So knight to a5 is played, and we get to see the idea. The bishop drops back to the little hidey hole on c2. And then c5 expanding on the queen side. This is generally the way that black needs to play against the Roy Lopez, to go for queenside play, and you can see that black has got quite a bit extra space on the queen side. White's prospects, meanwhile, lie on the king side. So white strikes in the center with d4. This is the move that white's been building up to for quite a while with c3. The knight also supports it. And we've got this tension in the center. And this is a theoretical position. There's hundreds of games at master level in this exact position. And white has a threat here. The threat is to play d takes e5. Now, if you're enjoying this video so far, do hit subscribe. I'll be continuing this series on logical chess move by move, so by subscribing you won't miss out on any of the future videos. So yeah, the threat was to take here. Let's just show that. If black were to castle, for example, well then white can win a pawn this way. So black doesn't want to allow that, hence black plays queen to c7, defending over here. So now if you captured and captured, well, the queen is defending this pawn and there's no knight takes e5 anymore. So queen to c7, and now white plays a move which I want to highlight and I want to explain because I think it's in contrast to some of the other earlier games that we've taken a look at in logical chess move by move. Now white plays h3 here. Now if you've watched the other videos in the series, you might remember that the advice was not to make weakening pawn moves around your king. But chess is a complex game, and there's always exceptions to these general rules. And here the exception is because, well, two reasons really. Bishop to g4 would have been quite annoying. Let's just show that. Let's just give black a couple of moves and show the idea behind bishop to g4. Let's say that white just moves their king, bishop to g4 comes, and white moves their king back. Well, in this case, black can eliminate this knight and draw the queen over and then capture on d4. White can't even capture back because then the bishop is lost. So yeah, bishop to g4 is an annoying move. That's the first thing, and that's why you wanted to prevent it with h3. And the second point here is that black doesn't have their pieces aligned to create a kingside attack towards white. I'd just like you to take a look at the positioning of black's forces to understand why it is that black is not in a position to launch a kingside attack. The dark squared bishop is on e7, nowhere near the white king. Also, the black queen doesn't have an open line towards the white king. Now, I want to contrast this with another game. This is von Cheve versus Teichmann, one of the first games we looked at in the entire series, where the position is quite different. The black queen does have a line towards the white king, and this bishop also has a strong diagonal. And that's why here h3 turned out to be a critical weakness, which was exploited with bishop takes h3. And with the white king opened up and black's pieces already well positioned to take advantage of it, black was able to invade. Notice you can't take the queen due to the pin, and pretty soon the knight came in as well, and black went on to win in devastating fashion. But there's no bishop takes h3 here. If black did it, then the point is that black's pieces are not in any position to exploit it. So I hope that makes sense, and hope that that helps understand why h3 here is fine, whereas in the other position, h3 turned out to be quite a big problem for white. Okay, back to Znosko-Borovsky versus Mackenzie. Sorry about the pronunciation there. Some of these names are not easy. Okay, so anyway, black brings their knight back towards the center, and bishop to e3 is played. Just developing. There's this tension on d4, and we can see that all of this tension is building up, and at some point it's going to explode, and we're going to see who that favors. Black castles. It was about time that he got his king out of the center, and knight to d2. I want you to pay attention to this knight. Like, it doesn't look like it's doing very much on d2, but watch where it travels. It takes a long route, but it eventually gets to a pretty interesting position and plays an important role. Bishop to d7, that's just connecting the rooks really. And rook to c1. So I think we could say that both sides here have completed their development, and it's like, now what? Now what do we do? We've got all of the minor pieces are off their starting squares, and the rooks are connected for black, and for white, very solid. White's got a little bit of extra space in the center, but what to do now? Well, black actually gives white a way forward with the next couple of moves. You can see the evaluation bar, the position is equal, and this is quite often the case if you've got an evenly matched opponent up against you. So black plays knight to e8, probably searching for a plan here, and I think the plan that black was trying to go for was f5. So bringing the knight back allows the f-pawn to move. So white just continues, knight to f1, and then black goes with g6 to support f5. But this is what gives white a plan now. It's a mistake from the opponent. And of course in chess you need your opponent to make some mistakes. Otherwise, well, if they make absolutely no mistakes, then it's only a computer that can do that. And the mistakes are more and more subtle at higher and higher levels. Like if you're around 1,000, then the mistakes might be allowing a tactic or leaving a piece hanging. But at master level 2, they make these subtle positional mistakes which can be exploited with correct play. So think for yourself here, what would you do to try and exploit this move? And ask yourself what opportunities this has created which didn't exist before. Like when the pawn was back on g7, what move wasn't possible that is possible now? Well, it's bishop to h6. So this attacks the rook, threatening to win the exchange and forcing black into an uncomfortable pin. If you're interested in learning more about how you can outplay your opponents in the middle game, then I help ambitious adults at the below 2000 ELO level. And if you'd like my help analysing your games just as I'm analysing this one here, then click the link in the description below and we can see if working together will be a good fit. Now, bishop to h6 has created that pressure, forcing black into playing knight to g7. And now the knight comes in towards the middle. Remember, it was on b1 and it came to d2 and then to f1 and then to e3. And it's coming into d5, which is a fantastic square for it. And worth pointing out that black can't really stop that from happening. If you play bishop to e6, well then there's a fork of the knight and the bishop winning a piece. So knight to d5 is going to be unstoppable for white. So what black does instead is just brings a rook towards the center, knowing that knight to d5 is coming and is going to have to move the queen back, which he does. And the decision that white makes here, I think, is very interesting, because white captures the bishop on e7. Now, the reason that it's maybe not the first move that comes to mind is that this knight looks fantastic on d5. I think you'd agree. I mean, it's an amazing piece, controlling so many squares in every direction. And this bishop, meanwhile, seems like it's not really doing very much. It's quite passive. But actually, appearances can be deceiving. This bishop was fulfilling a role, and that role was guarding the f6 square. Now, the thing about black's position is that black is weak on the dark squares, thanks to playing the move g6 earlier, and white can accentuate that weakness on the dark squares by eliminating the black dark squared bishop. So that's what happens. Now, you can't take back with the knight, because that would simply lose a pawn this way. So black instead takes with the rook. And now we see another really interesting and quite high level idea here. It's interesting that Logical Chess Move by Move is meant to be a beginner to intermediate book, but then every now and then you see this type of positional idea, which, I mean, even a 2000 rated player can learn something from, I think. So how to continue? Black has got some weakness on the dark squares, but how do you infiltrate? Well, it's through a transformation in the pawn structure, which creates a new square for one of white's pieces. It's this capture. D takes c5. Now what this does is it allows the queen into d6. That wasn't possible before, right? Back here, the white queen couldn't get into d6. But by capturing and capturing, the queen infiltrates into d6, with a threat, mind you, attacking the pawn on c5, so black's got to move that pawn out of the way, otherwise just loses a pawn. And then the threat comes in of checkmate. So really brilliant play by white here. First of all, recognizing what the real positional elements to pay attention to here was the weakness on the dark squares, and then transforming the pawn structure to allow the queen infiltration. Yeah, really strong stuff. So knight to h5, the threat was, of course, checkmate, so the knight had to move away, and it's able to move away with a threat on the queen. So black is sort of just holding on here, but you can see the evaluation bar is definitely in white's favor by now. So the queen moves back, and the knight moves back. So black is hoping for a repetition of moves here. If white were to play queen to f6 again, then, well, of course, black would just repeat and certainly be happy with a draw. But then white comes up with another amazing plan. I told you at the start that white outplays black positionally here, and again, this is a great move. Tough to see when your mindset is in attacking the king. So you're trying to attack the king, you're trying to checkmate, but then white completely switches to the other side of the board with bishop to e3. Now the threat is to come into c5, winning the exchange. So we can see another reason, or another way that black is weak on the dark squares. Black is also weak on this dark square diagonal. So white is continuing to build threats here, and black tries to bring the knight out to guard that square, which does work, but it allows white to now bring the queen in this way. So there was actually an even stronger move just back there. There was the possibility of playing knight takes e5, which was not mentioned in the book, because if black captures that knight, then white is able to capture the rook. This knight on c6 was overloaded, defending both the rook and the pawn. So white could have taken advantage there, but still, white's play and white's plan of going in with queen to f6 instead was still very strong. So we get queen to c7. That pawn was under attack, so black needed to defend it with an extra piece. And now bishop to h6. So the bishop has come back into h6, and now black is only able to hold on to the defense of the g7 square, which would be checkmate, with this knight on e6. And also the rook is under attack. So the rook moves away, and the move that I was looking at here to continue the attack was knight to g5. Now this is a great move. This would have worked too. It's not the move that was played in the game, but it has a strong idea behind it. Essentially, this knight is responsible for guarding this square, and well, if you take here, of course, you just lose on the spot. And if you try and defend the knight, well, then this rook is undefended and white can just take it. So that would have been another way that white could have played, but white instead decides to play it slowly. Just goes with rook on c to d1, building up the pressure on the only open file of the board, and black moves the rook back, looking for some coordination and maybe hoping for a queen trade. If there can be a queen trade, then maybe black will be able to alleviate the pressure and survive. But let's see what white's got in store here. Now this is another quite difficult move to spot unless you're thinking in the right way. So the way to think here is that black is clearly weak on the dark squares, and how can we bring even more pressure into the dark squares? Well, it's with the move knight to h2, with the idea of coming into g4 and then potentially into f6, or in some cases h6. So this backwards move to improve a piece, this is not, again, the type of move which is easy to spot if you're not in the right mindset. But if you are in the right mindset, if you're thinking about where the knight wants to get to eventually, then I think you might be able to find the idea that the knight is much better on g4. So how can we get it there? Well, it's by going backwards first. So now black is offering the queen trade, but by now black has been so badly outplayed that the tactics are going to start working in white's favor. And the queen trade would actually be fine for white. Let's just show that. If the queen trade was initiated, then the bishop on d7 drops at the end. There are just far too many threats here for black to survive with this dark squared weakness. So instead, black goes with queen to e7. But now white can actually not only allow the queen trade, but initiate the queen trade. Queen takes e7 was played and black resigned, and the reason that black resigned is that however black takes back, let's say with the rook, knight to f6 comes next, the black king moves away, and that simply wins a piece for white. If you enjoyed this video on logical chess move by move, click here to check out the next one. Every game in this classic book will help build your understanding of chess and help you win more games.